All right, guys, we are rolling live with the Dynamic Man podcast, episode 28. What's going on, guys? What's going on? It's good to have this show. It's good to have this show. I mean, I know some of you guys are obviously you just want the dating relationship content. You want the content for men. Some people like the COVID cabals. Some people like the Dynamic Man podcast. There's actually a lot of overlap between the two of these in a lot of topics. It's just a matter of focus. I'm gonna just say this stuff right, as people are getting on here. A little intro. The stuff that makes you a dynamic man, the stuff that, whether that's with women or whether that's with life in general. Obviously, we talk a lot about women and the dating market stuff, but the things that make you into a dynamic man are things that, and I talk about this on the email that goes out later today on my list, patstedman.com/opt-in. But these are the same things that affect everything that goes on in the world today. I mean, if you understand anything about the way the world works, you have one of the rules of it is as above, so below. So my view of the world, things I talk about in COVID Cabal, the political analysis, etc. Yeah, there's a specialization with women when I'm doing the stuff here, but human nature is human nature, just a different scale. So you get to see same sort of patterns and phenomena occur with this, and problems that affect a group of people on a spiritual level are also problems that will affect them with women. So if you guys are here, before I go into the meat of this topic, if you're here, drop a comment in the chat. Drop a comment in the chat. I want to see who's here. I want to see who we got going on here. Drop a comment in the chat if you were watching right now. Let's get a little energy going. Let's get a little amp up. This is an important topic today, and it's become a more important topic since the assassination of Charlie Kirk yesterday, because we're entering into an era where this is going to become, what I'm going to be talking about today is going to become a lot more important. And if you can embrace it, it will actually solve a lot of your problems with women. So if you are here, post a comment in the chat. And cool. All right. So the heroic man. What is a heroic man? What is a heroic man? Why does a heroic man matter? Well, let me put it this way to you guys. We have not had heroism for about the last 15 years for the most part. We have not had a culture supporting heroism. Jesse, it's good to see you in the chat here. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. We have been for the last 15 years in a culture that has really demeaned and devalued heroism. Now you get into astrology and stuff. It's because all these, have all these outer planets in Pisces, which is big, softy, effeminate energy. Tolerance for everything goes. But I mean, you don't need to know anything about astrology to know that we've been living in that era. You don't need to, like, if you've seen the world as it's been the last decade and a half, you know that people have devalued it and men have become less like men. So when we talk about like dating and relationships, we talk about women, all the stuff that you see, it's about, it's about game, or it's about sexual strategy. It's about the sexual marketplace. What's going on here? What's happening there? How do I deal with, these games that women are going to play? How do I, optimize myself in the market? And I'm going to tell you guys something I understand that stuff. Okay. I help guys with it for a living. It's not, and so understand that it's not that I'm opposed to, I think there are important things you have to understand and learn. But I really think at a certain point, guys need to stop being faggots about this stuff. I am really tired of the discourse in this corner of the internet. It's not universal, and the people who are partaking in it are losing their position, because here's the thing. You can only ride the decline so long before your face hits the fucking pavement. You like the thrill of the decline. You like the nice little drop down, get a little whoosh in your stomach, but eventually your face hits the fucking pavement. So when I hear people whose big fixation is about can't get married, can't have kids, I'm not saying can't because they're struggling. I'm saying that they refuse to do it as if anyone really gives a fuck, like as if a woman, like you've really stuck it to some woman. These positions of like, well, what's in it for me, huh? What's in it for me? What's in it for me? If you tell me what's in it for me, then maybe I'll do something. Look, I get it. We live in a low trust environment, and you don't want to be taken a fool for, right? People don't want to be used. I get it. We've lived under regimes that have only wanted to use us. They don't care about us. And you're just this cow to be milked, right? Taxes and otherwise. But what I'm trying to tell you guys is that things are changing, first off. But second off, the reason that they will change, this is a paradox, right? The reason they will change is because men rediscover heroism. I'm going to talk about this on a couple different levels. Heroism on sort of macro, the importance of it. But again, this is also about you making your own decisions. So we're also going to talk about on the personal. Macro, big picture. Okay. If there are no men who are heroic, then society will inevitably rot and decay and disappear. That's just a fact. Okay. You can only have like so much risk aversion in a male population before you don't have a male population anymore. You have a population of eunuchs. There's a certain point where, on the sort of prudence, boldness spectrum. And by the way, I don't even think it's fair to like characterize prudence, because prudence is kind of like wisdom. Prudence is like being able to control yourself and having restraint. This is actually a really important distinction here. I want to say this. This is actually I was not planning to say this. This is a really important distinction. There is a big difference between being prudent and between being self-interested, in the sense of what's in it for me. A man who is prudent may not do something bold and reckless. He may not do it. He may not do something bold and reckless, but he's not doing it because he has self-restraint. He has self-control. He has maybe awareness, right? I did not have appropriate prudence on January 6th, or I would have been able to see that I was being set up, like we were all being set up by the government. Okay. So, but what prudence implies is that you're controlling yourself, which means that you want to actually do something. That means that you actually have balls. So prudence is really just a form of discipline. It's a form of maturity. It's not being a faggot. Okay? A lot of these guys in the manosphere are truly embarrassing excuses for men. And I'm sorry, but if you define yourself as a man by being able to get women, right? Just being able to get women. I'm not saying that getting women isn't a component of what makes a man, impressive. But if your entire being is oriented around how much sex you can get from women, you're not a fully developed man by any definition of the word. Women are your master because their responsiveness to you rules you. So this is I'm not gonna. I have some of the screenshots here. I really don't even really want to bring it up. It's old news. I was gonna do a show on this, but my wife had just had a baby. It was just not a good time for me to do it. So the Dynamic Man show kind of got kicked, and it's kind of old news. It's old drama at this point. Me having a spat with this guy Spectre, who's like big obsession is like, tradcons doing things. Yeah, tradcons want to help women. They're betas. I just this stuff is really boring at a certain point. The inability of a certain category of people in the manosphere, because of their own trauma and immaturity, the inability to understand that some men are actually motivated by a lot more than women. That we're not all these kind of materialists whose sole focus in life is to get sex. It's lower on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs for us. I'm not saying that wasn't me at one point, right? Absolutely was a motivation for me when I was in my early 20s. But at a certain point, especially when the times call for it, a man should be motivated by something different. A man should be motivated in his actions by his conscience. Should not be motivated by the ability to get pussy and whether somebody's going to take advantage of him or not. Okay? The masculine spirit, the essence of masculinity is the exploration of the edge, right? Men were supposed to protect the perimeter. So that is where we are really wired. In the same way that a woman is wired to protect her children, to bond and protect with her children, and that's a deep visceral thing. And in the same way that we would say a woman has failed as a woman if she lacks the maternal instinct to protect her child, we will say that that woman failed as a mother. Every woman will say it to her, right? In the same way, men will look at other men during a fight to protect the tribe, and if men refuse to fight, we will look at them as failures as men. There's no way that you can rationalize to yourself. You can try. You can say that protecting your people, doing something for the betterment of society, you can try to tell yourself that that's just serving the feminine agenda. You sound like a fucking idiot when you say that stuff. You actually sound like a fucking loser when you talk like that. But there's guys who are going to say it because they want to convince themselves that doing nothing in challenging circumstances, refusing to pick up your part of the burden, refusing to try to fix things when there's an opportunity to. I'm giving grace to guys over the last 15 years because we've been in this situation where, maybe it seemed like there was no option, but there was no possibility, right? And that anything would just simply amount to nothing. I've never felt that way, but I'll give some grace to people who did. But we're at a different point in time now, right? We're at a point in time where masculinity is definitely resurging. And it's resurging in a very aggressive way because of how much it's been pushed down over a long period. I want to make a point here. The idea of heroism is doing something that has no guaranteed chance of success. It is doing something that is right and being willing to sacrifice yourself for that thing because it is the right thing to do. And when somebody doesn't value heroism, when a society doesn't value heroism, that's an indication that you live in a really sick society. You live in a spiritually twisted and evil society when somebody who is a hero is looked at as being a fool, because that is despair, that is demoralization in your ear. So when you have a man, ostensibly a man, right, will tell you that it's not worth doing anything, there's nothing you can do, why should you do anything, what are you going to get out of it? You just have to understand that you are talking to somebody who is a coward. They're a coward. First off, they're not smart. They hide behind that, because a man who would have some courage, but prudence maybe, might say, not yet, right? Don't be brave, but not yet, right? It's the difference between a guy who's in the trench and is willing to be in the trench, but doesn't just stick his head up out of the trench, right? Sticking your head up out of the trench, that's reckless. Prudence tells him to stay in, at least at that moment. Now, maybe there's a moment when you do have to get up and you go. But heroism in general is always going to involve some degree of personal sacrifice. So why would you want to do it though, right? Because heroes die, and most of them are forgotten over time, right? Not all. Charlie Kirk's not going to be forgotten, I'll tell you that. But a lot of heroes, over time are forgotten. Many are never even known. So why do you want to be a hero as a man? And what does that even mean? Well, I'm not going to get into like a specific thing. I'm not here to part of what I want to do here is I want to more like lay a different way of thinking for you about your life. But the reason that being a hero, having a heroic attitude as a man, even if you are incapable of doing something big, you have some malady, you have some suffering, but to bear your suffering with a certain degree of heroism by radiating positivity, like you are tapping into that hero energy in the same way. Because what you do, what a hero does is a hero raises up the energy of everybody else around him. A hero inspires. And even if something happens to a hero, how a hero loses makes a big impact on how it affects other people. Because what a hero does is he shows you the power of courage and living a life courageously. I'm going to tell you guys something that you already know, but that you probably don't think about a lot, which is that you are going to die. You are going to die. But most of you are not going to live. Most of you haven't lived. Most of you don't know what it means to live, because you've been raised in a society that has tried to convince you that all the things that survival is more important than living. And there's a difference between those two things. Okay. I work with one guy who had a really, really serious depression, malaise when it came to, the course of his life. And one of the things that I pointed out was that there have been things that he wanted to do, like join the military, right? Really spoke to him, always had spoken to him his entire life. And he had the ability to really contribute in a big way to it. But he had been told, no, you got to take this like safe corporate life. You shouldn't do that. That doesn't make any sense. He was encouraged by society not to fight for something that he really believed in. He was encouraged to take the safer path. And the result was that this individual was depressed. I don't think it's a coincidence. I agree that there are some men who are much more rationalists. There are some men that this doesn't speak to quite in the same amount, in the same way. But I have found, and it's interesting because it tends to be men that have a little bit more of like, let's say, an integrated feminine in them, men that have more feeling in them. I'm not saying that they're fundamentally feelers, but there is there's an idealism to them. there's a romanticism, there's an idealism, that those are the men that become the heroes. There's something about it, the hero is the masculine strength and courage buffeted by the feminine sense of possibility and belief. I really feel like a man, when he's in a heroic act, is a man at the peak of his existence, and that death, to some extent, it's obviously you don't want to die, you prefer not to, but it's the best way to die. I think that the only thing that comes close to heroic death is a death in your bed around your entire family, with loved ones all around you. It's a different quality of a beautiful death. One is like a honoring of your legacy, but if you can't have that, there's nothing better than a heroic death. Now, I'm not trying to encourage people to die. To some extent, I'm speaking about metaphor here, right? I'm not trying to encourage any kind of like legitimately suicidal behavior, right? But I really want to emphasize this energy in terms of how you approach your life and the risks that you take and the risks that you choose to take. There are risks of greed, and there are risks of conscience. Okay? If you take a risk because your conscience tells you it was the right thing to do, then you are on the track of heroism. Whatever happens to you, you're on the track of heroism. And something may happen to you. But here's the thing. Your life is so beautiful as a result of that. And I'm not talking about other people view it like that. I am talking about how you feel. I cannot tell you how good I feel every day. Every day. Even when I went to prison. I'm going to say every day I felt great in prison. But overall in that entire experience, I felt good. I felt this deep feeling of personal pride and satisfaction with the fact that I was a political prisoner. I had to suffer. I had to go through all of this. I had to bear all these losses. And I did it for something that was genuinely good. And a lot of people don't understand this. But because of the way my mind was at the time, it would have been different. Like I said, if I had been aware of what happened on January 6th, what was going on, I didn't go into the building because I'm like, this is a trap, guys, don't do it. That would have been fine. But I didn't have that awareness. And because I didn't have that awareness, if I had not gone into that building, it would have been because I was a coward. And that would have haunted me for a very long time. I don't know that I would have gotten over it, to be honest. Now, again, on a lot of levels, it would be really stupid for you to say that you want to change places with me. You guys are going to have your own path. I know a lot of people who were going to go to January 6th, and then something happened, stopped them from going. A lot of people were protected from that mess. I got pulled into it. It was my path. I'm not saying that you should mimic my path exactly. But what I'm trying to say is that this sense of living for something beyond yourself is the only way to live. There is no point in living. And if you try to live for anything just beyond yourself, you are going to be a miserable individual. And I'll tell you what you will do. You will become a communist, because what happens is that you start to hate yourself for being such a coward, for being such a miserable, self-loathing piece of shit, that then you begin to demand that other people change the world, that the problem is the world is just bad, and then you have to fix the world. I don't mean fix the world through your own example and through your own sacrifice, but this is one of those things where you start to demanding control you have to make everybody else behave a certain way because other people are making things bad. They're bad, you're good, actually. It's an inversion. So this is the thing. If you move too far away from heroism, you end up becoming a commie piece of shit. That's what happens. Now, I'm not saying that in Soviet Union and stuff that there hadn't been heroes, right? There certainly had been heroes. But those heroes, those were people who they were dying for their comrades on the battlefield in the Eastern Front. That's where their heroism came from. Or they still had attachment to the motherland, right? To Russia. But if you understand how those people work, they're not there's not this sense they look at themselves like ants in a hive. They're in a hive mind kind of thing. It's not this sense of like my independent conscience calls on me to risk myself for something better. It's not how they're motivated. They're motivated fundamentally by hate and the desire to tear things down. So if you become too much of a risk-averse person, if you become too much, you will start to become miserable. Because this is another thing that happens. Your world starts to constrain. If you don't dare at certain moments, your world and the sense of possibilities that you could have, it starts to collapse. But actually, when you trust yourself and you take risks, then opportunities expand. So what I see in the manosphere, but in Western society at large, and it's changing. And it's changing because of the heroism of people like Charlie Kirk, right? Someone who is willing to go out all the time in a dangerous situation. He's always risking assassination, always risking being hurt. I know he had security. He was always risking being hurt, putting himself out there, doing those public debates, being so prominent. But his sacrifice, like he lived, like we know that he lived. And a lot of people, they're not living. That is the depression. And I'm going to go deeper here now. It's why women are disgusted by us on some level. I'm not saying that women are great today. Don't misconstrue it. I'm not saying that as some big defense of women and their behavior, because it's not a defense of women and their behavior. But when we say that men are not men anymore, too much of the conversation in the corner of the internet around dating and relationships is that, oh, well, men don't, men aren't as assertive, or men don't open the doors, or men whatever, some sort of like superficial thing. But what's the essence of it? The essence of it is that there's no heroic men. The heroic man isn't there. And the heroic man is the integrated man. And women can feel that. They can feel they're with just a bunch of self-serving or scared people, risk-averse people. Women don't like that you're afraid of them, but it's much more than that. They don't like a man who's afraid of his own mortality. And that's the issue with so many of the game community. They might have gotten over their fear of women, but they didn't get over their fear of death. They didn't get over their fear of putting themselves out there with their life. They're clinging on to control and trying to protect themselves. They just view, okay, I'm going to learn how to take things from women, but they're very, very afraid of their own mortality. And it's no way to live. You can't live that way. You can't live that way. It should not be the case that somebody like me can go to prison and go through all of these various things, and to have gone through all of it and to have felt, on a deep level good, right? But the reason is because I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the fight I'm supposed to be in. I have clear sense of purpose and meaning in my life. And so while I believe I have so much more work to do and the course of my life is ahead and I don't feel like anything bad is going to happen to me, the truth is I would be at peace. I would be at peace with the course of my life and the decisions I've taken. And that's only because I did take the risks that I took. Risks for something that I thought was right. So a lot of guys have this struggle because they don't want to rally to the times. But a lot of the issues in your life, including with women, will start to get solved because, when you talk about confidence, well, okay, you'll improve your confidence if you make if you make more money, being able to provide is a major part of being a man, right? And you'll make more confidence if you're in good shape. You'll have more confidence if you know how to talk to women. That stuff is great. You should do all those things. But if you're afraid to live your life, if you're afraid to do things your conscience is calling you to do, if you're afraid of evil, you're not going to have a lot of confidence. You can't lie to yourself about that. You can't lie to yourself that you sat out. It'll twist you the rest of your life. And I'll tell you this, while you can always do good, no matter what age, stage, or time period of history, there are only certain periods of your life where you have the energy and capacity and the circumstances are right to truly operate heroically. To say that, yeah, I pulled my weight. I put myself out there. I was willing to go the distance. There's only a few times that you ever have that opportunity in your life. And I think, you know, you may have one or two that, if you don't take those, it will torture you. What I really see, like the epidemic of what I see with men today is really an epidemic of fear. And we can talk about with, okay, I don't know if I'm choosing the right woman. I don't know if she's going to leave me. I don't know if she's going to divorce rate me. I don't know. I'm afraid what she's going to do to my reputation. She's going to reject me. She's not going to want to have sex anymore. It's just what if, look at how things are. How can I do this? What if it's an epidemic. It's a pandemic. It's a pandemic of fear. You see plenty of men who are able to point out problems, but no men are able to say, I can solve it. There's no men that are able to say, I can handle it. The reason that my wife and I are having so many children, we want to have more children. The reason that, among other things, that we are operating the way that we're operating against the winds, let's say, of culture is because culture has been sick. And so when I see people say, "Oh, I'm not gonna get married, I could get divorced, raped," or "I'm not gonna have kids because, like, who cares? Like, they're just gonna indoctrinate them," whatever kind of fucking bullshit excuse they wanna have. Whenever I see that stuff, it tells me, okay, hope lies in the opposite direction of what they're saying. So it doesn't matter that it's hard, it just means I have to do it. The fact that it's hard is its own reward. Yeah, this is so much being afraid of looking bad. Actually being heroic will attract women who are actually dateable. It's true, because a woman who can appreciate a man who is heroic is a woman who is going to have her own sense of nobility and integration in there. That's a woman who has a lion heart herself, will appreciate that. A shield maiden in her own right. But it's this pandemic of fear. That's what's going on here. They're afraid of everything. These guys are afraid of everything. And I want to, I don't know where all these guys who are part of, obsessed with evolutionary psychology or whatever, or evolutionary biology, do they forget that men are expendable? They think that women are directing that. That's nature. That's what it is. We have different roles in the ecosystem. But part of being a man is understanding that wild push towards excellence that entails risk to get to. That's why nature rewards the winners and punishes the losers. So it's a matter of doing, being heroic. It's not just doing some kind of crazy thing like going into the Capitol during a protest when they stole the election. It's literally living in the opposite way that people who want to kill and enslave you want you to live. That's being heroic. When they're telling you that there is no purpose to your life except to get your rocks off, and that, whatever, insert a million other demoralization propaganda pieces. When they tell you that that's what, that's all you should do is just like try to get by, check these boxes. Now, how about no? How about no? How about I'm going to do what you're telling me I can't do? You're telling me what I shouldn't do. If more men did that, society would get fixed very quickly. But it's more than that. More men would feel alive. They really would. They would feel alive. This is such an amazing time to be alive. I am so filled with gratitude that I get to be here. I get to stand, even if it's just like, on the same side, not in the same stature, just to stand on the same side as people like Charlie Kirk, Donald Trump. The only reason that this turned around is because Donald Trump said in 2015 that he was willing to run for president. He decided to be a hero. It's really what he was. It was a hero. His act would have been considered hopeless. So you see that things changed only because men were willing to say, you know what, I would rather go down with my conscience than I would go along with this bullshit. So that's what I want to say today, guys. If you are feeling lost in your life, if you do not feel a sense of purpose, if you don't know what to do, get involved in fixing things. If you see that there is something wrong, stop pointing out the problem. At a certain point, it's not useful anymore. Go and do what needs to be done to solve it. If there's a problem that people aren't forming families or having children, and that keeps you up at night, that's something that you see as like a real issue, then your objective should be to meet a woman and have children. I understand it can be hard, but the point is that you learn that motivates you to do it because it's a problem. Or the politics in your local area are corrupt. You fix it. There are so many examples of this. There are so many problems, but don't be afraid, and don't fall for that crap saying that, oh, it doesn't matter, nothing matters. Just look out for yourself. Just try to get your paycheck. I don't think that advice is good for most men. I really think that is what has wrecked the confidence of most men. Because if you look at boys, they look up to heroic figures, and they look up to it for a reason, because it is visceral within us. And we've been long housed into thinking it's too dangerous, you shouldn't do it, it's not safe, and that kills the spirit in men. If you guys have any questions, drop them real quick. I'm going to answer some of the ones in the chat right here before I sign off. But what of Gonzalo Lira? He was courageous, but his unchecked ego cost him his life, IMO. Absolutely. So Gonzalo was a great example of exactly what you say. He did not have prudence. He did not have any prudence. And to be honest, his decision making was sort of bizarre. I don't understand. He had opportunities to get out of there before that he never took. It almost seemed like, I don't know, it almost seemed like he wanted to get, I'm not saying consciously he wanted to get executed, but he just, I don't think he was a very, you know, rest in peace and everything, but I don't think he was a very mentally stable person. Because a lot of the decisions he made, like, I would never have taken my motorcycle through the checkpoint with all that stuff. I don't understand, why didn't he just try to cross by foot through the Carpathian Mountains? Like, he telegraphed everything he was doing to them. He drew a lot of attention to his stuff. Pet the main man Stedman, I'm very aligned with your objectives. I checked out Power versus Force because of you. How should I apply these concepts, or how have you? Thoughts? Okay, great question. So, force is obviously operating from fear, right? You're trying to control things, and so you have to exert, stuff directly, whereas power is much more, you move towards love. Eventually you basically are manifesting it, like, you believe that it can happen, it should happen, and so you stand in integrity, you're brave, and your belief ends up shifting it, essentially. um I'm trying to think of a good example of this stuff. I mean, as a day-to-day thing, you just want to always pay attention to when you're falling into fear and other related low vibration emotions, like, the seven deadly sin kind of stuff, but like anger, any kind of like really need to control, like, I have to do this, I have to do that, like a fixation, rather than having faith, putting yourself out there, having faith. And when you really step into the path of being courageous in your day-to-day life, that you don't let fear control your actions. It doesn't mean do stupid things, right? But we're talking about when you know that you have to do something, or something that's good to do, and it takes a little bit of courage to do it, that you do it, right? That you do it. So you inspire people around you when you act that way. I'm hearing these stories, like, of, like, leftists who are cheering on Charlie Kirk dying. But every single time, every one of these anecdotes I hear, when someone says it in person and somebody responds and says, "That's really disgusting," that most of them freak out and back down. And the reason is because a lot of people are even just parroting certain stuff because nobody has the courage to stand up and say anything. I don't believe, I don't want to say most, but many of the people who are saying this stuff, it's less and less all the time. Less and less people are really believing this stuff, this rot. But many people have gone along with it because they've been afraid to do anything different. And, like, I gotta tell you guys, I understand, because standing up and having the full force of the mob against you is extremely, extremely terrifying. Or at least I'll say it's hard. It was psychologically hard. I'm not gonna 2021 in particular, that was a hard year. That was a really, really hard year. To feel energetically all that hate from people, but knowing deep down that you're going to win and standing up, people over time, like, the haters became more and more disempowered, and I could just see it. I could see it firsthand. So, guys, this is the end of the episode. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Little bigger picture stuff for you today, but look, live your life heroically. Again, this is not about you needing to do any sort of specific action, but there are going to be things that you see in your life that you are going to feel like, I can do this. Maybe I'm being called to do this. You are being called. It's coming to you. You're being told to step up. I'm going to tell you guys something. I'm going to announce it on Twitter. But I am going to be doing a lot more shows. I'm going to be doing more COVID cabals. I have no time for this stuff, so I got to figure it out. But I am going to figure it out. In the same way that after the 2020 election, COVID cabal went from, 1 to 2 times a week to being like 6 days a week, every day basically. I'm going to be doing more COVID cabals. I don't think I'm going to be doing that many, but if I can bump this up from, right now we're at 1 to 2 shows a week. If I can bump that up to 5, if I can do 3 COVID cabals, 2 dynamic man podcasts a week, maybe 3 and 3, whatever, that's a good thing. And part of the reason I'm doing it, in spite of the fact that I really have no time, I'm filming a course, and I have I'm finishing this book, and that's what's on top of all the coaching stuff. I got a business to run, got a new baby. I got a lot on my plate. But the reason that I'm going to do it, is because even though I am nothing, I'm a speck in the shadow of the giant that was Charlie Kirk. Other people have to step up. When one man falls down, others need to come up. Others need to talk and share and educate. So, if other people do the same sort of thing as me, we can fill the vacuum and we can carry on the legacy in the best way that we can. That's my hope, at least. But that's what came to me. I had this deep sense of, you need to step up now more. So we'll make it happen. I'll find the time. We always find the time for the things that are important to us. But yeah, I love you guys. Do we need a re-education institute for the communist? Some of them are going to be re-educated. I am not sure about all of them. Communism, and it's just coming out in the email later today. Communism is really, people make the mistake of being pedantic and talking about communism as if it is some kind of economic policy, right? Some sort of kind of economic platform. Okay, yeah, economics are a part of it, especially historically. But economics were just the first vector that communism asserted itself, at least officially, as we had the term. Communism really goes back to the French Revolution. And probably there's iterations earlier than that. But it is this attitude that is really the worship of the deformed, the deranged, the disgusting, the broken, the sick, the perverted, over the beautiful, the successful, the glorious. It is really just the political manifestation of Satanism. That's all communism is. If it seeks to create low trust and constant division and chaos, and everybody, it is the worship of the lowest. And if you attempt to be heroic or bring anybody else up, then you are an enemy to the crab bucket of communism. This is absolutely right. Anyone who grew up under communism, whether it's in Latin America or whether it's in Eastern Europe, understands exactly what's going on right now. They could see it firsthand. Americans, Solzhenitsyn said it's been a long infiltration. When even after the end of the Cold War, he was like, "Oh shit, America's really getting infiltrated." It's been a long process throughout Western Europe. But the point is that communism is really a spiritual disease. It's not. Economics are just one role, one vector. We've actually seen that, a lot of communism today, they've actually based it on racial elements. So it is, or sexual orientation, right? So, and that's why it morphs and forms. And so you have said, well, that's not really communism. Communism believes in, that workers should, like, just shut the fuck up. Like it's so boring to talk to people who can't. It's like they don't understand the essence of it. Communism is a spiritual ideology. Fundamentally, it's just a political manifestation of Satanism. That's what it is. So I don't know that you can. The only way, you can't re-educate a communist. All you can do is you can bring them to God, honestly. And I'm not saying that so much in like a super evangelical sense, although there's not a question that truly becoming, having like a spiritual awakening, coming to Christ, can certainly wipe the communism out of you. Although not, there are a lot of Christians who have been subverted by it. They worship some sort of communist Christ, commie Christ, who likes to distribute, all the bread to everybody because they all deserve it equal. They have all their little distortions on the scriptures. But yeah, communism is, you have to change their orientation towards reality before you can re-educate them. And to some extent, you have to make them believe in something better. So what I found is that people who are on the left, who have generally themselves with like a real, love of others and a desire to, create, they've been tending to flip out of the left as time's gone on, as the propaganda's fallen off of them. By the end, the people who are really going to be left are going to be truly, truly, truly the scum. A lot of people fell for the propaganda because they may have like a more, empathetic or superficially empathetic personality. Because personally, I don't think just because you have abstracted empathy doesn't actually make you more empathetic. It's at that little graph, right? Emphasis, focus, distant versus proximate. But yes, communism is a spiritual disease. Some people who are really just filled with hate, they are, and there are people who are ostensibly conservative who are spiritually communist, right? They will operate like a communist, and I think over a long enough timeline, they can start to fall into that. So anyway, a little digression, guys, but love you guys, love you all. I will see you on the next stream, and like I said, we're going to be getting these going more often. So if you guys have topics you want me to cover, just please DM me. I'd be happy to do it. All right, see ya.